There have been a lot of my subscribers asking me to do a review on the Whole30 diet. Now, if you've gone into your local grocery store, you've probably seen a Whole30 book there, a Whole30 recipe book, and quite honestly, it's a little bit of a difficult diet to understand on the surface. So I understand why so many people have asked questions. Let me first off say, this is not a keto diet, this is not a fasting protocol, and this is flat out going to be my review of a specific diet. You are tuned into the internet's leading performance, nutrition, and fat loss channel with new videos Tuesday, Friday, and Sunday at 7 a.m. Pacific. Also, want to make sure you hit that red icon to subscribe and then hit that little bell icon to turn on notifications. Now, after this video is over, I encourage you to check out Thrive Market. So the cool thing with Thrive is I've been able to create keto bundles and fasting bundles. So Thrive is like an online grocery store where you can get your groceries cheaper than most supermarkets. But the cool thing is it allows me to create my specific grocery bundles. So if you're watching a keto video of mine, or you're watching a fasting video of mine, or you're watching a hormone optimization video of mine, I have specific bundles of food for those categories. So it allows me to choose a grocery cart for you. So I've compiled some specific bundles. So I encourage you to check out Thrive and start getting your groceries cheaper than you would at the grocery store. But for now, let's go ahead and dive into some science. Now the thing is, I have personal experience with the Whole30 diet, and I think it's actually a pretty darn good program. Here's the thing. My wife suffered from autoimmune conditions. She had Lyme disease, she had Hashimoto Disorder, which is a thyroid condition. So it's where her immune system attacks her own thyroid. It's an autoimmune condition. An autoimmune condition is where your body's immune system ends up attacking something within itself. So in her case, her body had antibodies that were attacking her own thyroid, rendering it somewhat useless. Therefore, her thyroid levels would decrease and it would be easy to gain weight. So it's a very common issue that a lot of people are facing these days. And a lot of times these issues end up coming because of gluten. Okay? Gluten ends up causing all kinds of various issues because of the prolamins, because of the different protein structures that trigger an antibody response. I've talked about that in other videos. You can click on the little tab and you'll probably go to a video there. But anyway, let me talk about the Whole30 diet for a minute. The Whole30 diet is very similar to something known as an autoimmune paleo diet. The whole idea is to eliminate inflammatory foods from the diet. So we're eliminating grains, we're eliminating legumes, we're eliminating things that would normally elicit any kind of inflammatory response within the body. Now, with the Whole30, she really does a good job of making it very, very paleo-esque, meaning you're still eating foods that taste good, you're still eating seeds, you're still eating things that allow you to get that taste and that crunch that you would want. You're just eliminating the foods that would normally cause inflammation. We're talking about dairy, we're talking about legumes, we're talking about grains, we're talking about gluten, and we're getting creative with how we make recipes. So the autoimmune paleo protocol is a specific protocol where you not only eat these kinds of foods, but then you slowly indoctrinate foods that would be inflammatory to test your response. So I'm going to give you an example of how it worked with my wife. Now, my wife didn't specifically do the Whole30 diet. She did more of an autoimmune paleo protocol, which is very, very similar to the Whole30. So I can speak from experience here. So what she would do is she would eat very, very bland, extremely bland, non-inflammatory foods. I'm talking a pretty boring diet at first. Okay, we're talking like chicken without a lot of seasonings, chicken without any kind of fun stuff on it. We're like talking like basic chicken with salt and maybe a little bit of pepper. No cayenne pepper because cayenne's a nightshade and technically would be inflammatory. So it's very limited. Okay, then we would use things like tapioca starch. Okay, we'd use arrowroot powder and we'd make thin crusts and things like that out of that because you don't want to be using any kind of grains. You don't want to be using any kind of flours. You don't want any glutens. So very, very baseline, okay? And then what we would do is slowly over time start indoctrinating foods. So the first thing that she would test out is she would test out some egg yolks. So after a period of like 60 to 90 days of eating exceptionally clean, she would introduce egg yolks into her diet. And she would measure her inflammatory response. However, some of this could very much be perception. So that inflammatory response could be a placebo effect on the body. But if you introduce a food, you can measure your own response. Do you get bloated? Do you get a rash? Do you get a headache? Basically, what it's saying is if you abstain from certain foods for an extended period of time and then reintroduce them, you're going to feel an immune response because at that point, your body's immune system would react to a food if you have a given issue with it. So what the Whole30 does is it takes these principles and it expands them into a little bit more of a flexible diet. So it's an anti-inflammatory protocol and it works exceptionally well. But the problem is it's not always sustainable for the long term, but as you start to learn the foods that work with your body, you can make it a lot more long term. And the author does a really good job of making that very, very clear. So then in the case of my wife, what you would do there is you'd start with the egg yolks. If you didn't have an issue with the egg yolks, then you knew that those were okay to eat. So then you'd move on to the next food. Then she'd start adding in maybe a little bit of some dairy here and there, seeing how her body responds to that. I can tell you from experience, when she was doing that, her body did not respond very well to dairy. Then she would add nightshades into the mix. Okay, then she'd add things like tomatoes, she'd add tomato sauce, she'd add cayenne pepper, other peppers, see how her body responds. It's a very, very intricate process, and it takes a lot of effort and a lot of detail. And again, the whole reason I'm doing this video isn't necessarily to say go out and do the Whole30 diet. I've just had a lot of people that have asked about it, and I noticed on search queries and I noticed on YouTube that people are searching for it a lot. So why not give a legitimate breakdown? So when you reduce inflammation in the body, you do allow the body to heal. Okay, you allow the gut to heal. You allow a lot of things to happen. That leaky gut situation a lot of times goes away. But when you're talking about reintroducing foods, it can also cause a very sharp inflammatory response in the body. So my advice to you is, if you're going to try the Whole30 diet, is make sure that you have 90 days to really focus on it. Because if you slip up and you don't do it right, it quite honestly can throw away the entire 90 days. Now, the whole idea with the Whole30 diet is you really have 30 foods that you're focused around, 30 foods that would work really, really well for you, that you can create all kinds of different recipes with. And again, the author does a tremendous job of breaking that down so that it's usable for the everyday person. So if you want to learn more about it, you can definitely check it out, do a simple Google search. But as always, I just wanted to lay out the facts, let you know that it's not keto, okay? It's not fasting. So those of you that are on this channel that are doing keto and fasting, it's probably not the diet for you, but it is a good way to start introducing carbs and seeing how your body responds to it if you are wondering what your body's going to do when you eat something. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel. If you have ideas for future videos, or there's other diets that you're just interested in learning about and want an expert opinion on, I'm happy to provide the details. As always, keep it locked in here. I'll see you in the next video.